Hey everyone, so I have Maddie with me here again, and we talked about diagnosis and treatment in the last video. If you guys want to see that, you can go see that. But this video we're going to be talking about post-cancer recovery and just recovering from the cancer experience in general. This is a huge topic, so we're not going to be covering all of it, but hopefully we can get a bit of a start on it and at least explore some aspects of post-cancer recovery. So Maddie, if you could describe your post-cancer experience thus far with like a metaphor or an image or an analogy, how would you describe it?
I would describe it as, I guess, an uphill climb on a rocky mountain kind of cliff, but with rocks kind of falling at certain stages, trying to hit you and push you off your path and making it to the top and making it back to full health, I think.
I think if I was to describe it, it's not the perfect analogy, but I think it's right in a lot of ways. I kind of sometimes imagine myself like being tied by the ankle to a cart, and the cart has a single horse that's just really slowly trotting along. And at the beginning, I was just like racing. I was trying to like run and pull the whole cart and the horse on my own. And it just wasn't working. I wasn't able to pull it all. I'm not that strong to be able to do that. And because I tried so hard, I got so burnt out. And so I kind of often imagine myself kind of like falling and kind of falling flat on my back and then just being dragged by the horse and the cart, because it would only go at the pace that it was going to go at. It could only go at that speed, and it was very slow to start with. But over time, it took a long time, but over time being able to actually stand up and walk behind the cart, beside the cart, and eventually actually getting on it and hopefully controlling the horse and cart and getting it to turn when I wanted it to turn and things like that. So that's how I sometimes imagine the post-cancer recovery. And I definitely thought I was gonna just get on that cart and go. Like I was ready the day after chemo to be like, yeah, let's do this, let's race. But that's not how it works.
Yeah.
So do you feel like you have been recovering?
Yes and no. Definitely have, physically, of course. It, like my metaphor, it was a bit of an uphill climb, and I think today I still am on that climb, but I'm nearly there fully. I struggled immensely with work. I took about roughly nearly under 9 months out to chill out after my treatment and just do my own thing. And I also began to volunteer at like my local Red Cross and get stimulating things back into my life and to just rebuild my body and to rest when it needed. But getting back into things such as work was very hard. In other things, I think I physically began to get better with my chemo brain. That was one thing that I had to tackle quite head on and really badly. I would definitely get very spaced out in conversations, and I'd be talking to someone, but then I would be away in like the fairies, and it was quite bad at one stage. So that eventually began to go away, and I think I just gave it a lot of time. I didn't want to dive into, head straight back into work or doing a course straight after my treatment, as it was so heavy. I think just listening to your body and giving it time, I was mainly doing. Yeah.
And what about mentally?
I definitely struggled for a long time with depression, and I was very, I guess, away from the world in that time. And I think I was just processing everything that I had been through and, realizing what the hell just happened. I think that was the biggest part. And I think now that I have slowly begin to come out of it, it comes back every now and then to haunt me. And I think it will for the rest of my life, and I've kind of almost made peace with that. But I think in that low time, just look at it as if to say, well, I would say to myself, I have to fall apart to move on from this. And I have to really get to the deepest of my deepest pain, I guess, from what had happened, to let that go. So it's not easy, but it took me a little while, and I can say now that I'm in a much better place and I've become more peaceful towards my experience and towards my cancer. That's definitely the main thing and the end goal that I really wanted.
Yeah. And when you say you feel more at peace, is it just like day to day you notice that you're not holding on to certain things, or like your thoughts aren't as preoccupied with that kind of stuff?
Yeah, not taking me back. So I was kind of almost living in the past as well. Now I'm very mindful of it, and if it comes up, I address it and I would listen to it and I would take it in and be like, that happened. But I guess just continuing on with your life and realizing that you're here today is like the most biggest thing.
Yeah. I guess trying to be more present, which is so hard to do.
Yeah.
Especially like we mentioned in the last video, sometimes a coping mechanism that we can have is to focus on the future when the present is so difficult. And then once you're out of it and you're doing okay, it's hard to be present because you've literally been training yourself to think about different time periods, either the future or the past or different things. And so I think it can be hard to do that switch to really try to enjoy and focus and savor the present when you haven't been doing that to defend yourself for a solid period of time.
Yeah, it's that I have all my limbs and I have all my, I'm still here, I'm with my family. I can work around that. I can beat that. I beat cancer. I can beat the permanent side of it as well.
So Maddy, I'd love your thoughts on this message that was sent to me. I'm not going to put the username up because I'm not sure if they'd want that. But there was someone who were a few years out, like 3 or 4 years out from a cancer diagnosis and treatment and all that. And so they were currently okay physically in terms of the cancer. They were cancer-free. But they were still struggling with feeling overwhelmed with a lot of things and still feeling quite depressed. Did you take time off work or life to get back on track? Or do you have any suggestions to help with recovery? So I thought I'd ask you, what kind of suggestions would you have for someone who's still struggling a couple of years out from the whole experience?
I would say keep yourself busy. I personally found that very helpful, as when I did fall into my my lowest of lows, depression, I was doing, barely anything. I was volunteering and just staying at home. So I think I was so flooded with my thoughts that I had, nothing else happening in my life to distract me from it and to help me move forward. I found that the biggest help that could have helped me. But then again, at the same time, even when you are working and you are having a busy life, I think it's just taking time out for yourself. And I find a lot of peace in meditating and connecting with your body and being surrounded by really positive people and getting rid of the negative as well.
Like, I know for me, when I was going through the experience itself, while it was very difficult, a lot of people told me that I was coping quite well. And I think objectively, maybe I was coping quite well. And there were times when I was like, this is really hard, but I can only control so much. I have to focus on the positives, things like that. Even with someone like me who maybe was coping okay, I still always try to reach out to organizations or to people who I thought were going through a similar thing or could help me out and give me some kind of support and resource. Going to see a counselor, I think therapy can be very helpful because it's all about, you trying to figure out what you need and how you can manage the time that's coming, and you don't feel like you're burdening anyone, which I think is a huge thing that comes up for people going through something like cancer. You don't want to burden people, especially those that are close to you who might already be really struggling with the fact that you're going through this. And so I find that a therapist is great for that because you don't worry about that. They're paid for this. They're trained in this. They know that they're going to get these kinds of things. And so I would suggest that even if you're not sure if you need to deal with it more or process it more or however you want to term it, I'd really suggest going out and reaching for some kind of resource. And often there are lots of resources and supports out there. And that doesn't just mean like your friends. It can mean professional ones, like going to see a therapist, reaching out to cancer organizations that you know of or that are near you to maybe see people, maybe meeting up with someone who's gone through a similar experience as you to just talk about things, to just vent. Maybe as part of that too, having a journal, like writing out thoughts that you've had can be very helpful, or writing a story that can be a fictional character but draws a lot on your life, even once you've finished treatment too, to try to keep that up afterwards, because sometimes we can get stuck. We can feel like maybe our mental health stuff come back, because once you've had cancer, that's like a risk factor. You know, if you struggle with things later down the track, there's a high chance that maybe you would struggle with depression or anxiety or something else like that again.
Yeah. And on that note as well, I'd like to say to definitely not be ashamed. I felt a lot of shame when I fell into my depression. I was very ashamed at the time, I think, just because I had made it through, and I beat the cancer. Everyone was hoo-ha, woo. It was a happy time. But it was like, no, like I'm almost, I don't want to sound like this is a bit of a heavy word to say, but I felt almost like I was broken. And definitely reaching out, I for a long time kept it to myself, and I even kept it from my own mother and my boyfriend, my partner, the people most closest to me. And then once I had shared it, it was definitely a lot of relief. Another thing too to get rid of, I think, is to get rid of, well, what I did was I actually got rid of all the clothes and the pajamas I wore to hospital. It's a bit of an odd thing, but yeah, I remember going through my wardrobe one day. It was, 6 months out from treatment, and I was like, I want to get rid of this. I want to get rid of these clothes. They're just, it was a reminder, but it wasn't a good reminder in a way. It kind of had that, I was in that shirt when, I was rushed to hospital with certain complications from a certain chemotherapy at the time. And yeah, I don't know if that could potentially help, but I found a lot of helpfulness and a lot of peacefulness almost with chucking it away and getting rid of that, I guess, energy that came along with that piece of clothing or that item as well that you may have taken with you to the hospital.
Yeah, I think that could be really helpful for people, or even just in doing that, being able to reflect on it. Once you've done that, be able to write a little something about that, or have a chance to talk about what that was like, to throw it away, because I think that can be super healing, to get rid of those, as you said, not helpful reminders that were actually kind of holding you back. Yeah.
I also found a lot of peace and healing in writing myself as well throughout my treatment. And I would write all about, my deepest pain, all the experiences that I had been through. I found, a lot of, it was almost like talking to someone. It was just getting it on the paper, getting it out of your system. I found a great deal of healing in that. And I actually came to the end of my treatment, and I had, dozens of these journals and thousands of, entries that I had put throughout my time on treatment. And I thought, why not I get this together and I help other people and I make a book.
Yeah, it's amazing. That's so cool.
Yeah, there was definitely, I found on my time on treatment, a lot of, a bit of a hole in the market when it comes to young people with cancer and reading and books as such. As I found a lot of books regarding cancer were, a lot of older women or a lot of older gentlemen who had, ovarian or prostate cancer. There wasn't so much on helping young people or reading other people's experiences as such in a novel form. So, I put it all together and I created a book. And
what's it called?
She Will Always Carry On.
She Will Always Carry On.
Yes. So that was also a reference to a song by The Pretenders. It's called Hymn to Her. And it was, I listened to it actually a lot on my time on treatment. And it encouraged me to always carry on. So I thought that would be a great name for the book. Definitely found a lot of healing, and I really hope to achieve to help other people with that book and to let others know that they're not alone.
Because I think even if you have the chance to be able to find similar voices and be able to discuss it or read it, you're always going to feel a bit isolated, but not to have that plus that isolation that you're going to have anyway is really, it's just difficult. Too much. It's very hard. I'll definitely have a link so you guys can check out her book. I haven't read it yet, but I've heard really, really amazing things.
Thank you.
And I'm just very proud that you were able to pull that together. That's really amazing.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So hopefully there were some good suggestions to help anyone out there who's struggling a little bit in recovery. And that's the thing. It's just everyone's a little bit different, which is, of course, a bit frustrating. If only we all had just like 5 steps. We all went through them the exact same way. Yeah, that would be fantastic. But hopefully they're still helpful. And thanks so much, Maddy, for being on this another video with me.
No worries.
It's been a pleasure, having you on. And I'll definitely have a link for your book for other people if they'd like to check out.
Awesome. Thank you.
Great. Well, I'll see you all in the next video. Okay. Bye.